These are some of the weirdest mutations ever observed in humans. Josephine Myrtle was born with a rare genetic anomaly known as dipagus. Her body was completely normal down to the waist, but below it she had 2 pelvises and 4 legs. Despite her condition, she still managed to marry a doctor and have 5 children. Javier Botet is a Spanish actor with Marfan syndrome, a genetic disorder that affects connective tissue and makes people grow extremely long and thin. His 6'7", 120-pound build has landed him various roles in the genre of horror. A family of people with blue skin lived in Kentucky for many generations. They likely gained their blue skin through a combination of inbreeding and a rare genetic condition. Some people are born with an extra hole in their ear where the cartilage meets the face. It's a condition called preauricular sinus, and many experts believe it may be the evolutionary remnants of gills. Here are some of the dumbest criminals of all time. In 2009, Joey Miller and Matthew McNelly attempted to rob a home using permanent marker as their disguise. But as the name suggests, permanent marker is rather difficult to remove, so the thieves were quickly recognized and arrested. In 2014, an Oregon woman named Sadie Johnson started a 50,000-acre wildfire that ended up costing the state $8 million. She later told authorities that she started it because her firefighter friends were bored and needed work. 2 Chicago men once tried to rob a restaurant with a squirt gun, but the owner told them to come back in an hour since he was too busy at the moment. So they did, and the police were waiting for them. In 1993, Missouri man James Scott purposely damaged a levee on the Mississippi River to delay his wife from coming home so that he could continue to party. He ended up flooding 14,000 acres of land and was sentenced to life in prison for causing a catastrophe. Morbid Facts. When Bono was 14, his mother suffered an aneurysm at her own father's funeral and later died. Bono said the grief in his heart at the time was a big part of why he turned to music. A German shepherd named Tommy attends Mass every day at his local church in Italy. This is because his owner had her funeral there and he hopes that one day she will return. Australian vegan Maria Stridham wanted to prove that vegans can do anything by climbing Mount Everest. Sadly, she died while descending as a result of severe altitude sickness. In 1929, 2 scientists at Princeton University successfully turned a live cat into a telephone. They connected its auditory nerve to a transmitter, and when one researcher spoke through the cat's ear, the other could hear it through the receiver. The experiment was viewed as groundbreaking and led to the invention of cochlear implants. This is a photo of Princess Diana consoling Elton John at the funeral of Gianni Versace. Just over a month later, Diana would die in a car accident and Elton would perform at her funeral. Jean Calment lived to the age of 122 and was the oldest living human in history. She smoked cigarettes for 96 years from the age of 21 and only decided to quit 5 years before she died. If you're ever bitten or scratched by a wild animal, go get a rabies shot immediately. The way rabies kills, once you show symptoms, there's no way to treat it and you will almost certainly die. In 1957, a woman attending an MLB game was hit with a foul ball that broke her nose. The game was briefly paused and resumed once the woman was put on a stretcher. As they carried her away, the very next pitch was fouled off and hit the same woman, breaking a bone in her knee. If you don't want wrinkles but would prefer to stay away from Botox, this woman has a solution for you. To avoid wrinkles, Tess Christian claims to have not laughed or smiled for more than 40 years, even after the birth of her daughter. The individual animal with the most human kills ever was a tiger from northern India. After a tooth injury from a gunshot left her unable to hunt normal prey, she adjusted her hunting style to go for humans instead. She was shot and killed in 1907 with an estimated 436 human kills. Jeannie Wiley was locked in a room for 13 years by her father, who wanted to protect her from the outside world. He kept her tied in a straitjacket and would bark at her like a wild dog if she made any noise. When she was finally rescued, doctors said she had the cognitive abilities of a 1-year-old baby. Napoleon Bonaparte was buried with all of his body parts except for one, his schlong. It is currently owned by a private collector in New Jersey who recently declined a $100,000 offer. Waist chopping was a popular execution method in ancient China that involved sawing the body clean in half. It was abolished in 1734 after a Chinese official was cut in half and still managed to write the Chinese word for awful 7 times in his own blood. Snake wine has been considered a therapeutic alcoholic beverage for thousands of years in China. It is produced by infusing venomous snakes in grain alcohol and is said to reinvigorate a person. This abandoned fawn was found curled up next to a fake deer that was used for target practice. This is a 1964 photo of Black Reverend Joe Carter preparing to face the Klan after he tried to vote. During tests in South Korea, access to all rooftops are typically locked. This is because students have been known to throw themselves off the roof due to the pressure of the exam. In 2005, one sheep decided to jump off a cliff, causing nearly 1,500 others to follow. However, only the first 450 were killed since the remaining animals' falls were cushioned by the dead bodies below. These are some of the craziest Viking artifacts ever found. This Viking sword was found by reindeer hunters who were hiking at a high altitude in the mountains of Norway. It may have belonged to a Viking who lost his way and died here over 1,000 years ago. The Oseberg ship is a 9th century Viking ship that was discovered in nearly perfect condition in a burial mound in Norway. This iron helmet, dating back to the 10th century, was discovered in Norway in 1943. It is the only complete Viking helmet ever found, and contrary to popular belief, there was never any proof that Vikings wore horns on their helmets. This 1,000-year-old Viking axe head found in Denmark shows why the Vikings were known as pioneers of craftsmanship. An 8-year-old girl from Sweden found this 1,500-year-old Viking sword while swimming in a lake. Upon pulling the sword out of its resting place, she officially became High Queen of the Nordic realm. These are some of the weirdest break-ins ever reported. 3 burglars once unknowingly broke into Dolph Lundgren's home and tied up his wife. But they fled immediately when they found a family photo and realized whose house they were in. In 1971, a thief broke into a house and was shot in the legs by a trap set up by the homeowner. The thief then sued for damages and ended up winning the case. A Minnesota burglar was caught after he logged into his own Facebook account on the computer in the house he was robbing. The homeowner returned to find the man's account still logged in. In 2013, burglars broke into an office building to steal all the computers. But after realizing they were robbing a non-profit organization that helps victims of sexual assault, they returned everything they had stolen and left a heartfelt letter of apology. These are some morbid facts that you didn't know about ancient Rome. Compared to today's standards, ancient Romans were pretty disgusting. They had public toilets that were never cleaned and there was no toilet paper. Instead, you had to wipe yourself with a sponge on a stick that everyone shared. The Romans also made their toothpaste out of mouse brains and used urine as mouthwash and detergent. The urine industry was so big that there was even a tax on it for a period of time. But if just living in ancient Rome sounds bad enough, you better not have been a criminal. During halftime at some arenas, certain criminals were torn apart by wild animals. Some prisoners were also substituted into plays as punishment, so if a character died in the play's story, a real criminal would die on stage. And the worst of the worst criminals, such as men found guilty of rape, often had their testicles crushed between 2 stones. These are some of the weirdest mutations ever observed in nature. Snowflake was an albino gorilla that used to live at Barcelona Zoo in Spain. Sadly, he was euthanized in 2003 after being diagnosed with skin cancer, likely as a result of his condition. He was the world's only albino gorilla. This octopus with 85 tentacles was found near Japan in 1957. This incredibly rare cardinal is called a bilateral gynandromorph, meaning it is male on one side and female on the other. A fisherman in Maine found this translucent lobster in 2017. Scientists say the odds of this happening are about 1 in 100 million. Ulnar dymelia, aka mirror hand, is an extremely rare developmental condition of the hand. It is characterized by the absence of the radius, duplication of the ulna, and symmetrical polydactyly, aka 7 or 8 fingers and no thumb. Morbidly wholesome. A woman battling breast cancer married the love of her life just 18 hours before passing away. The couple had a ceremony at a hospital chapel and her final moments were nothing short of beautiful. In 1996, Bear Grylls broke his back after falling 16,000 feet due to a torn parachute. Doctors said he would never walk again, but 2 years later he climbed Mount Everest. In 2009, Barry Delaney honored a lifelong pact he made with his best friend who was a British soldier. They agreed that whoever died first, the other had to wear a dress to their funeral. In 1986, a 5-year-old boy fell into a gorilla enclosure and lost consciousness. But to everyone's surprise, a male gorilla named Jumbo stood between the boy and the other gorillas in a protective gesture. He made sure the boy was okay and even rubbed his back. This incident helped create a positive public perception of gorillas. After Heath Ledger died while filming the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell all agreed to star in the film so that it could be completed. Afterwards, they all donated their salaries to Heath Ledger's 4-year-old daughter. After the death of his wife, a man from Argentina planted this guitar-shaped forest so that she could see it from heaven. In 1986, a young Indian flight attendant named Nirja Banat was on a plane when it was hijacked. The terrorists were targeting Americans, so she hid the passports of all 44 Americans on board. Instead of saving herself, she helped the passengers escape and died while shielding 3 children from a hail of gunfire. One of the children on board is now a captain for a major airline and says that Banat was his #1 inspiration. Months before his sudden death, Mythbuster Grant Imahara built a fully animatronic Baby Yoda. After spending 3 months of his personal time designing and programming the robot, he intended on bringing it to hospitals to cheer up sick children. William Kyle Carpenter threw himself in front of a grenade in Afghanistan to shield his best friend. He's the youngest living recipient of the Medal of Honor and has progressed incredibly well in his recovery. This bride's father died 10 years ago and his heart was donated. The man who received the transplant ended up walking her down the aisle. In 2010, Gary Richmond was senselessly beaten into a coma and barely made it through emergency surgery. He woke up with no memory of his wife of 20 years but ended up falling in love with her all over again. Here are some world records that are so insane they'll probably never be broken. The unofficial record for alcohol consumption was set by Andre the Giant. The 7'4" monster once drank 156 beers in one sitting, which is just under 15 gallons. The world record for the most babies born to one woman is lucky number 69. Mrs. Vasilyeva from Russia gave birth to 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and 4 sets of quadruplets. The tallest person ever recorded was an American man named Robert Wadlow. At the time of his death at age 22, he was just under 9 feet tall and showed no signs of stopping. Park Ranger Roy Sullivan holds a record that you'd probably die if you tried breaking. Nicknamed the Human Lightning Conductor, he was struck by lightning 7 different times and survived each one. These are some insane facts about atomic bombs that they'll never teach you in school. In 1964, the U.S. Army performed an experiment to see if 3 young physics students could design an atomic bomb. They had no specific knowledge of nuclear weapons and were only given access to publicly available documents. Within 3 years, they succeeded. In 1958, the U.S. Air Force lost a 7,600-pound H-bomb in Savannah, Georgia that remains unfound to this day. Tsar Bomba was the largest bomb ever set off by far. It produced a mushroom cloud 168 times taller than the Empire State Building and sent shockwaves that traveled around the Earth 3 times. In 1951, an atomic bomb cameraman accidentally ripped off his safety goggles a few seconds before the bomb exploded. He immediately covered his eyes with his hands, and when the bomb detonated, he saw the bones of his hands through his closed eyelids just like an X-ray. These are some insane coincidences that'll make you question reality. A Chinese couple recently discovered that they were in the same photograph as teenagers, more than a decade before they even met. On the left is the facial reconstruction of a 9,000-year-old skeleton that was found in a cave in Cheddar, England. His DNA was tested and researchers found that a living relative was teaching history only a half-mile away from the site, linking back 300 generations. These identical strangers happened to sit next to each other on a flight. When Don Carcos fought in World War II, he was hit with shrapnel and blinded in his right eye. While working in a barn 64 years later, a horse headbutted him in the exact same spot. The man was thrown into the wall with force, but his vision was suddenly restored. In 1952, Werner von Braun wrote a book called Project Mars about the first manned expedition to the Red Planet. The book imagined that human colonists on Mars would be led by a person named Elon. In 2013, a woman in Florida was waiting to buy Powerball tickets when she let an elderly lady go ahead of her in line. The 84-year-old lady ended up winning the $590 million jackpot. A Swedish woman lost her wedding ring in her garden until she found it 16 years later growing on a carrot. In 2001, the Taliban used dynamite to demolish this 4th century Buddha statue that was carved in Afghanistan. While initially devastating, it was found that the explosions had revealed 50 caves that were untouched for 1,600 years. Inside the caves, researchers uncovered some ancient Buddhist relics, including the oldest oil paintings in the world. Hall of Fame boxer Sugar Ray Robinson once had a dream where he killed his next opponent in the ring. Afraid that his dream was telling him something, he initially backed out of his next fight until a priest convinced him otherwise. He ended up scoring a decisive knockout in the 8th round that resulted in the death of his opponent, Jimmy Doyle. A Russian woman once caught her fiancé cheating on her when she saw him with another woman on Google Street View. In 2015, a man found a Mountain Dew bottle from 1992 that would have won him a brand new Super Nintendo. Jim Springer and Jim Lewis are identical twins who were separated at birth but ended up living nearly identical lives. Both married a woman named Linda, got divorced, and remarried a woman named Betty. They also both had a dog named Toy, drove a Chevy, and smoked Salem cigarettes. All of this was discovered when they were reunited at the age of 39. These are some pets that came back from the dead. In 1923, the Brazier family was visiting relatives in Indiana when their dog Bobby suddenly ran away. After days of searching, they returned to their home in Silverton, Oregon, expecting to never see their dog again. But 6 months later, Bobby miraculously returned home after venturing close to 3,000 miles across the Rocky Mountains in the Mississippi River. In 2015, a cat that was hit by a car and buried for 5 days managed to crawl out of its grave and back home. Despite appearing much worse, he only suffered a broken jaw and the loss of an eye. In 1982, the Almeida family lost their pet tortoise Manuela while their house was being renovated. 30 years later, they were cleaning out their attic after their father died and amazingly found Manuela still alive. They think she was able to survive by eating termites in the furniture that their father was hoarding. These were some of the craziest World War II tactics that actually worked. The Nazis made crooked picture bombs specifically intended for officers. When they were retreating, they left paintings on the walls and skewed them to the side, so when they were straightened, they were rigged to explode. The Ghost Army was created in 1944 as the first tactical deception unit in U.S. Army history. They used inflatable tanks, fake radio traffic, and built phony headquarters to confuse the Nazis. A U.S. naval destroyer once won a battle against a Japanese submarine by throwing potatoes at them, which the Japanese thought were grenades. The Royal Air Force dropped matchbooks into enemy territory containing instructions on how a soldier could fake an illness. Once Nazi command heard of this, they stopped sending their troops home when they said they were sick. Therefore, many genuinely sick troops were sent into combat, resulting in even more disease and death. Weird nature facts. In September of 2001, thousands of residents reported blood rain falling over the state of Kerala, India. While there are many theories including extraterrestrial origins, scientists are still not certain as to where it came from. Last year, the world's only known pink manta ray was found in the Great Barrier Reef. The diver was so amazed at first that he thought his camera was broken. In 2016, a swarm of 20,000 bees chased a car for 2 days because their queen got stuck inside. Avocados never ripen on the tree, so farmers can use trees as storage and keep avocados fresh for up to 7 months. Shrek the sheep ran away from his owner in 1998 to avoid being sheared. 6 years later, he was found living in a cave with enough wool to produce 20 men's suits. Weird nature facts. Scientists believe that a function of zebra stripes is to deter insects. So researchers painted stripes on several cows and discovered that it reduced the number of bug bites by more than 50%. The Costa Rican glass frog has transparent skin, enabling you to see its entire organ structure. Dragonflies are nature's deadliest predators when it comes to catching prey. They catch more than 95% of the prey they target, making them 4 times as successful as the king of the jungle. Octopus truly are nature's aliens. They have 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood. Koalas sleep for 22 hours a day. The rest of their time is spent eating and wandering around aimlessly looking for a mate. When they don't find one, they give up and go back to sleep without a care in the world. Frozen in time. The preserved carcass of a 39,000-year-old woolly mammoth was discovered in Russian permafrost. Nicknamed Yuka, the animal is so well preserved that even its brain remains intact. This Roman toddler footprint has been preserved on this tile for more than 2,000 years. This pocket watch found on a Titanic victim is stopped at 2:28, just a few minutes before its owner fell into the icy Atlantic waters. This 2,200-year-old mummy named Lady Di is considered the best preserved mummy in the world. Her skin, organs, and veins are still well intact, as doctors could still perform a checkup and even a gynecological exam. She was preserved in 21 gallons of a liquid that remains a mystery to this day. If you're not a fan of traditional burials, one of these alternatives might be for you. If you have faith in future technology being able to revive people, you can pay $200,000 to have your body frozen in a chamber of liquid nitrogen. The Scottsdale Cryonics facility currently holds over 100 deceased people who are all hoping to one day be brought back to life. If you want to go out in style, you can hire a cremation artist to turn your ashes into a galaxy orb like these ones. There's also a company that makes special urns that cast a shadow of the deceased person's face. This is the first living coffin made from mushrooms. It's designed to decompose your body within 2 years so that you can become one with nature. More of an ocean person? Luckily, you can have your ashes made into the base of an eternal coral reef. And if planet Earth doesn't suit you eternally, you can pay a company called Celestis $2,500 to blast your ashes into orbit.